So one of the things I remember, I used to follow you on Facebook, and then I stopped. And then a friend of mine, a couple years later, he said, Andy Cub, he comments on some of your stuff. He said you should follow Jeff Berlin. I said, okay, I'll do that. And I remember the reason I didn't, or the reason I stopped following you, was because it was almost like you were inviting controversy at the time. And now, just recently, you do a public apology to Victor Wooten and Steve Bailey. You're talking about huge personal transformation and growth. Was it primarily your ego getting out of control, and then you had a self-realization event? Like what led to what you've been going through, and how were you operating at the time before that, and how are you operating now?
Well, thanks for asking that because for me, this is more important than maybe music is right now. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. I know a lot of us have. And the way that I ended up was hurt, ungrounded, out of balance, and the ego compensated. And I'm doing this in a nutshell. And all my life, since I was 18 years old, I felt something is wrong with me. And I started, actually earlier than that, it was 18 that I went to therapy. Things were not right. I noticed people seemed to be content, seemed to be grounded. You know, everyone has their problems. But I could not get a grip or a handle on how people kindly and calmly get through life. And I've been in and out of therapy, my own voluntary seeking of it, since I was 18 years old. I'm 63 now. When I was 60, I was just in a period where I did a lot of my Facebook, stuff challenging, not polite, very hard edged. It was just a symptom of even the messages in my columns, in my interviews, how I may have interacted with people. It was all based in fear, all based in shame. It was all unhealthy, and I could not resolve it. I tried. When I turned 60, I fell apart. I literally lost my mind and felt that this is the end. I understood why people commit suicide. I understood it. People commit suicide, I feel, when they feel there's no option or hope to extract yourself out of the awfulness, the hopelessness of the pain, the fear. Man, when you're in this, you can't imagine people who've been through this can the awfulness and the non you get to thinking it'll never end. And I have a guitar player friend here in Clearwater who recommended somebody who I went to. And I went when I was 60. And in this time, she was wired differently, let's say. I still see this person. And she was a licensed therapist who renounced her license, not believing in therapeutic things, her thinking, and went into a kind of a spiritual bent. And she kind of amalgamated a soupy spiritual thing with therapeutic things and came up with something where instead of my mother did and you, Anthony, said and Victor Wooten and Steve Bailey and all bass players, and instead of this, I went inside. And man, let me tell you, nothing was harder than to do that. Nothing. Because now whatever was going on wasn't your doing or your fault or how you are or you don't understand. And I spent about 7, 8 months on the floor of my house, crying, sobbing, shaking like I was in an Exorcist movie, buddy. I mean, it was murder because feelings that I had suppressed, feelings. I don't know. It's not like, oh, mom did this and this happened and she said and not this. It's that these things get internalized in their feelings. So they started to come up, and I was getting worse and worse and worse by each passing month. And I would write to Beth because we have a communication relationship where I would see her and she would sit there and go, "Nope, you're doing fine. You're doing fine." I said, "Beth, that ledge looks really good now, Beth. Nope, nope, you're doing fine. You're doing fine." And what she meant to say is that this is a passage where people often in fear, because I've been there, don't go through it all the way. I got on that train and I had to ride that train to its conclusion. And ultimately, I felt a. I rem, can I tell you this? I felt on a Monday. I said, "Beth, it's worse. I, I'm getting worse, Beth." And I wrote her. She says, "Hang in. This is what you got to go through." Tuesday, I wrote her again because I was seeing her on Thursday or something. "I'm going crazy, Beth. I'm going." She says, "No, you're doing fine." On Wednesday, Anthony, I was so bad. I suddenly felt as if uh, I suddenly felt as if I hit bottom. I felt it. I physically felt hitting bottom, and I went totally numb. And I went, what is this?" And from that moment, I started to get better. She said later, "You hit the bottom in this dark night of the soul, it's called," because I was into spiritual pursuit, and people experience this, where the essence of what we construct for ourselves collapses. When it collapses, we collapse. If everything you, Anthony, believe in falls apart, what are you? You know what the answer is? Nothing. But you're nothing in the sense that everything you believe in, everything you have is nothing. It's false. It isn't real. When that happens, what do you do? What do you trust? Who are you? What are you to rely on? And that happened to me, man. Talk about losing your essential self as a human being, because that's what happens to people like me in the dark night of the soul. What happens is this is a healing process. And then as you come out of it, you reconstruct from another place, not a damaged place. And so in the subsequent years, I would practice being nice. "Hi, guys. I'm sorry I did this stuff." Okay. 3 months later, "You stupid idiots out there, you're all idiots." And then I would catch on a couple of months later and go, "Whoops, I'm sorry. I got it. I did it again. I don't know what happened. I feel so bad. And I did. I would work to be nice. "Hey, Anthony. Hey, how you doing? Everything good?" It wasn't natural, but I did make the effort. And finally, in December of this year, I had another collapse. And about a month before, I was dancing in Beth's office saying, "Man, I feel as great as I've ever felt." And I did. I had this collapse. I said, "What the hell is going on here?" She said, "People sometimes get strong after their first diminished and long-term depression to be strong enough to experience the next stage in a collapse of something internal." And what happened here is I, for better or worse, even lost more ego ground. I feel it like talking to you now, that what I'm discussing isn't the ego part of me, which I recognize that sensation and try and conscious. I'm conscious all the time. There I am. I did this. I see. The watcher part, which I'll give you a little examine. I'll give everyone a little test here to show you the different. If you're interested, I have an interesting experiment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I love this
So
stuff.
this stuff is, and the readings that I've done, The Dark Night of the Soul, I've gotten videos from her about people that lecturing on it, different aspects of spiritual growth. What is spiritualism? It isn't, or maybe it is, but it is the natural the natural you without the pollution, you know what? I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers. I only love the Raiders, is a construction in a sense. And if I could do away and appreciate Pittsburgh and the Steelers, although I probably prefer one of the others, the sense is that there is a more natural sense of me that should have been before I was hurt and deviated from a healthy growth path by parents that unknowingly did this. So,
Steve Vai had a great example for me. I'm sorry to interrupt.
please,
This
I'd
has
love to
been
hear.
so helpful. He said a lot of people, they're holding this jar, and the jar is empty. And every life experience you have gets put into that jar. Every opinion you have gets put into that jar. And people end up believing that they are the jar or the contents of the jar. but you're still the person holding the jar. You're not that person that has these experiences. You are the person holding those experiences. So it's like, and my boss said, just because someone makes you a crap sandwich doesn't mean you need to eat it, you know? So it's kind of like we have a choice of taking what's in this jar and believing it's us,
Right.
or believing that we are the person holding the jar, and that the jar and its contents do not define us. And other people, no matter what they stick in there, it doesn't need to change who we are. And we're not in touch with being that person holding the jar. And Robert Fripp is all about this notion that we are, there's a guy named Gurdjieff that he follows, this philosopher, and that we are most people are in a sleeping, walking state, almost like zombies, and we're never truly awakened. So all of this stuff has been so central to a huge transformation in my own life since September 2014, just huge for me. The conversation with Steve, and then the guitar camp with Robert Fripp, and then all the other experiences and all the readings. So I'm glad I have not had a dark night of the soul. I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate to have not had that. But those examples right there really feed into my understanding of what you're talking.
I think Steve nailed it. And that's true. I agree with him. And I'll give you a little example of the person you are rather than the person who thinks. And this goes for everybody else. I'd like to do a little experiment. And here it is. In your mind, say the word house. Tell me when you did it.
Okay.
In your mind, louder say the word house.
Okay.
And the final one is in your mind, scream as loud as you can the word house.
Okay.
Here's a question, and I'm curious what you would say. Did you notice in all three experiences there was a part of you watching?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. On the third one especially.
And this is an indication of something that I've been developing, because in the sleeping mode that you're discussing, many of us are sleeping, and usually people that are highly opinionated, gossipy people, opinionated in the degree that, I know I'm opinionated in music ed, opinionated for its own sake, which is what I used to be, are asleep. We are governed by the thoughts, not only the jar, but the things that I like this football team and no metronomes are bad. Why? Just because I say so,
The monkey mind, Fripp calls it.
The monkey mind. Good for Fripp. See, I'm joining an elite club, and so are you, of people, I think, and we like to invite people to join us. It's a good, especially, us being the sick or the damaged or the mentally unhealthy or the soul spiritually imbalanced people that are seeking and getting better. When I never thought I'd find this kind of balance, and now that it's happening to me, I never thought it would come, man. So I just wanted to point out that in the development, we developed that watcher part. And that's when I began to see this ego part who went, well, Anthony, weird, what a funny word, Anthony's in his weird.com, And of course, that's not the watcher, the guy who screamed house, perhaps, or screamed cookie or something. So that is, in a nutshell, what I'm developing, and it's very important to me, and I probably talk too much about it. So
I don't think so. I mean, to me, it's the stuff of life, and it's you don't realize the value of it. You don't, like you said, you don't think you'll ever get there, and then when you're there, you realize you could have had it the whole time. It's not so distant, it's not so hard, but we spend decades defending a worldview with rules and opinions and these kinds of things that we grow to believe these must be true. And when somebody does something that violates some of the rules or makes us feel jealous or something like that, it's because we're defensive. It's our ego saying to us, that person doesn't live by your rules, and that person is doing well. What's wrong with you? Why can't you do that? You know the rules. So it's been hugely transformational stuff.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. By the way, this probably should be a two-parter, shouldn't it? This
Yeah.
maybe a five-parter. I don't know.
If you need to get going, we can end it. So it's
No, I'm happy to chat. It's just, I would assume a lot of this is going to make people go, oh,
I don't know the Steve Vai one. People are eating it up. They love the non-musical slash musical context. A great exercise that I read about is if you envision in your mind a room with two doors, and if you think of a difficult situation, something that made you upset, let that come in through one door. The two doors are on the opposite ends of the room. Let it come into one door, and you visualize it, and you get a sense of what it is, and it might look like colors, it might look like shapes, sounds, whatever. But you watch it from a distance, and you get to develop a familiarity with that feeling, and you wait for it to leave out the other door. And if you do this mental exercise for long enough, these feelings that you get, these feelings of discomfort or ego or whatever it is, you start to train yourself that things enter and then they leave. You also teach yourself that you can have compassion for these feelings. And when these things come up in your life, you teach yourself that they will leave. Like, it's not permanent. This
right.
feeling, I know what this feeling is. As soon as you feel it, you know what it is. It's that thing entering the door. And you know what it looks like because you've studied it. And we spend so much of our lives avoiding those feelings.
Yes.
But
Which
real
is what
life,
my,
go ahead.
no, that's what my dark night was.
Yeah.
It was all my life avoiding things. And you said you hope you don't get it, and you probably won't. Dark night could be different. You could be just sort of depressed or just sort of down. Mine was utter and absolute loss of self. And that, for a highly egotistical being, loss of self is freaking terrifying. So, somebody like you, who I sense is a sort of a lower keyed guy, if comes a time where your system decides to auto correct, you may just sort of, man, I don't like feels so great. And it won't be as awful, but it is predictable and you will emerge. And really, often there's nothing to do about it except recognize. And you said to, what did you call it? Honor those parts, I think you said, that go through the door. But
Have compassion
if,
for.
have compassion for, that's a good synonym for my word, which is love it, because there's a part of me that was so badly hurt that it caused, the ego. Well, I'm the best, and then, if you don't study like I say, you're a doo doo, which which is an industry term for poo poo. So, and so in my case, it's I learned to love this injured part, and I would embrace it, and I'll feel it. And I actually gave myself permission recently, not terribly long ago. I made a declaration, and it's made a difference in my life, which is, no matter what I feel, no matter how I feel it, I'm going to honor it, and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to let it come, and I'm never going to restrict or restrain or, I mean, if I'm in the middle of a session, I guess I won't pay too much attention. But later at the hotel, I will lay down, and I'll go back to that, and I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up. And it's that integration element, that these things that were not known and not dealt with are now a part of, they come up, and, okay, I feel this. Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, I'm so mad. Yes, you are. I mean, it sounds a little silly, but I've healed a great deal of the ill psyche in me, and I'm as grateful as can be, man. I really am as grateful. My bass playing is better.
I
My
was
bass
going to
playing is
ask that, like, over the decades, how did your ego influence what you were playing? And now that you know that feeling, you said you have a new awareness for when the ego pops in.
Mhm.
How does that affect you as a musician and as a bass player?
Well, I feel I've never played better, and I feel that pretty much my entire musical career is a fraud. It's a fraud in the nature of what I constructed it on. So it's an honest and I feel a true assessment. I agree. I played maybe music that people may enjoy, but I played a lot of stuff that was love me, love me, love me, love me, love me.
All
And
right, well, I'm going to get rid of this then.
well, that thing endures, and I'm grateful for it. Those Bruford things. But that was the thing of this. I mean, love me, love me, love me, fast fusion, And now I've found whole new way to play bass. I found other things. My playing isn't as virtuosic because, quite frankly, I don't qualify anymore. Not with Hadrian Farad and that new young crew of firebrands around. These guys are simply beyond belief. And I'd be foolish if I were in my ego state. Well, these young kids, I'll show them a thing or two, which probably would have been my bent a little while ago. So now, when I've kind of abandoned that sort of need to whatever, I've come, one, to love these guys and respect the living heck out of them, and two, it's with a calmer nature as a bass player. I said, "Wow, look at this! I'm finding some interesting new things," and so it's the liberation and allowing the spirit to flow. And I never knew what spirit was, and I guess I still not sure. I guess I take it to mean the natural me, what I was, as I said earlier, what I was meant to be. So yeah, my bass playing is satisfying. It's great. It's flowing out of me like juice out of a blood orange. So
Have you written any new songs since going
yes,
through this?
yes, not a lot, but I have. I have. I'm not what I would call a real gifted composer. I'm sort of a worker at it composer, and some guys have that gift. I'm sort of like da 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 da. No, da 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 da. No, da 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 da. No, da 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 da. Okay, that one.
Do you
So
compose on the bass, or I see? Whoops, I see you doing this. Do you write
okay,
on the keyboard, or
yeah, on keyboard and on bass. I write on both, and I'm fortunate. I write a lot of nice bass things now that are slightly different. This is bass. This is piano. This is slide trombone.
this is violin?
This is wackadoo, wackadoo, wackadoo.
Frank Zappa, this is reggae, right?
It's reggae. Frank was an interesting guy, man. I mean, he was a guy that I think would have benefited from spiritual pursuit.
You
He
played with
he
him
had a
for a
lot of
while.
angst. I did, and I got myself thrown out of a band through bad behavior, and rude attitude. I'm telling you, man, I left bodies in the wake, and it was a lot of humble pie that I have to eat in order to own my thing and grow from there. So I've come to develop a rather appreciative taste for humble pie
So you did
because if I
lose opportunities as a result of this
I
attitude.
lost them and I threw them away.
Mm.
I burned bridges. I was fairly out of my mind and fairly out of control. You can find a lot of that stuff on the internet. There's not too much, hidden evidence of that. And you know what karma is? You gotta pay the tab, man. The Dark Knight, you've gotta pay the tab. I put something out, I've gotta pay the bill for it. And that really is, in one way, why I confess these stories and open up and like that, because I don't want anything to be hidden. I don't want to lie about anything. I don't want to make one flippant excuse about anything in me that I've earned. And so I'm okay with it because you're getting maybe more of a sense of the kind of guy, at least today. Maybe in 3 months I'll be different again because I feel calmer. I feel more loving. I feel more, centered, more grounded. I still think music education needs fixing. I still think I need to practice my bass. I still think Victor Wooten and Steve Bailey are helping people and doing well for people, and I owe them an apology and other people if I've, cast aspersions against them and all other teachers. I still feel metronomes don't work, but if people wish to use them, of course they should. So I'm firm in my thing, apologetic where it needs to be, and I'm fine with it all.
Have you heard from any of these people that you've apologized to, or you feel like in the past you might have wronged?
Um, Give me a second. I want to answer. Not really. I've apologized before and fell back. So I don't think they're wrong in saying, well, here Berlin goes again, man, apologizing. And then the next thing is like, don't, I don't know what, don't slap bass. I don't know, whatever. Don't use a fretless. I'm not sure what.
Well, if I go through a dark night of the soul, your phone's going to ring at 2 in the morning.
You can call any time, and your dark night, I'm fairly imbued with a little bit of an understanding of things, and again, that doesn't make me in any way qualified as a teacher expert in any way, but I do have a sense of things now that I didn't. And if you do experience it, it'll be a tolerable and less vicious form than mine, because you aren't losing a great deal of of that collapse where you're a more solidly formed, emotionally stable guy than I was. So it's like a house falling down and then, the Empire State Building falling down, or forgive me, the Twin Towers, I guess, I mean, bad analogy, but you understand it's that collapse. That collapse was me. And it was devastating. And then, it was necessary. So you said, I hope it didn't happen. You know what ironically happens to guys like me that go through it? We're as grateful as ever for the experience. We are. I went through murder, man. I really murder. Hell. Hell. I thought thoughts. I said, I can't tolerate this. Bye, world. I'm gone. Wouldn't do it. I said something. I got to get through this. Beth helped me out. I read a lot of literature. I cried. I suffered. I shook. Nothing. I apologized. Oh, what did I do? What did I say? What did I have? What is this? What is this? And finally, it just began to ease out. And now I play bass pretty well.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this very human story. That I really appreciate it, and I think it takes a lot of bravery and candor, and it's really kind of you to offer this this time and these words. So thank you so much, Jeff.
I'm honored to be here, and thank you for the chance and the opportunity. And I apologize if I talk too much. It's actually something I'm attending to in my therapy, is to this need to just go blah 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 blah.
I love it. So don't apologize. There's no need. Thank you so much, Jeff. And maybe in a few months we can talk again and see where things are.
I would like that.
Thank you so
I would
much.
like that very much. I wish you well, and hi to everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
All right, Anthony.
All
Cheers,
right.
buddy.
Have a good one, Jeff. Bye.
Bye bye now.